And I say good morning to those of you who are watching this on Sunday morning. You got an extra hour's sleep, so maybe you made it. And I also say welcome to all of you who are watching this service at whatever time you are watching it. You know, one primary draw for me to Unitarian Universalism, one of the real primary draws is the fact that we have a democratic structure. Here, power is shared and we meet as equals, recognizing that each one of us is unique and meaningful, and we add something unique to our congregational community. Unfortunately, as you know, we can't meet in person, but I want you to remember that we have interweaving networks of relationships that connect us all together into a compassionate and a caring community. So let's remember to keep those connections strong. Let's remember to stretch out, make new connections, renew old ones. Call somebody if you can, just to say hi. Pretty soon you're going to be hearing more about how our membership team is going to be helping us to keep our connections fresh and strong. So look for information about that in our newsletter that's coming out this week. You know, this is just a couple of days before the election, our presidential election of 2020, and it's a tense moment on this eve of this election. And so I'm glad that we can have some time today to pause, to find our spiritual balance in preparation for whatever might come next. Our democratic religious tradition calls for us to promote democratic processes within our congregations and in society at large. So let's be together as a democratic faith community, exploring preparation for whatever might come next. Exploring how we might strengthen the democratic values and practices so essential to a healthy society.
Our opening hymn today is Now is the Time Approaching. It's number 144 in the Gray Hymnal. Now is the time approaching, by prophets long foretold, when all shall dwell together, secure and manifold. Let war be learned no longer, let strife and tumult cease. All earth a blessed garden, and God the God of peace. Let all that now divides us remove and pass away, like mists of early morning before the blaze of day. Let all that now unites us more sweet and lasting prove, a closer bond of union in blessed lands of love. O long expected dawning, come with your cheering ray, yet shall the promise beckon and lead us not astray. O sweet anticipation, it cheers the watchers on to pray and hope and labor till all our work is done.
They're food for the winter. For leaves, birds, and animals, turning comes instinctively. But for us, turning does not come so easily. It takes an act of will for us to make a turn. It means breaking with old habits. It means losing face. It means starting all over again. And this is always painful. It means saying, I'm sorry. It means recognizing that we have the ability to change. These things are hard to do. But unless we turn, we will be trapped forever in yesterday's ways. God, help us to turn from callousness to sensitivity, from hostility to love, from pettiness to purpose, from envy to contentment, from carelessness to discipline, from fear to faith. Revive our lives and turn us toward each other, for in isolation there is no life. Let us say our affirmation together. Love is our doctrine. Compassion is our way. Here we seek to create a joyful home for free religious exploration, build community of caring fellowship, nurture the hopes, and serve the needs of our world. Each week, we light 3 chalices. The first is for this congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Salem. We light our second chalice for our partner church in Simonfalva, Transylvania, Romania. We light our third chalice for our children and youth in religious exploration and all around the world. Let us sing the flame into light.
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
Good morning and welcome to the Time for All Ages portion of the service. Today I'm going to tell you a story about why it's so important to learn to pause and listen to others' thoughts and opinions, especially when we find ourselves in disagreement. This story is called Many Elephants and is a traditional folk tale retold by Sarah Conover in Kindness, a Treasury of Buddhist Wisdom for Children and Parents. Long ago, the Buddha and his followers lived in a park near a city, in a peaceful grove of trees. Many wandering holy men also lived there. Some of the men believed that they alone understood life's secrets. Other holy men had beliefs about life that were just the opposite, and so the 2 groups argued day and night. This alone is true. What you think is a flat-out lie. Alternate facts, they shouted. How can you be so dense, the other would respond. How could anyone believe the things you do? Finally, one morning, after yet another quarrel broke out, a group approached the Buddha and told him about the continuous bickering. When the Buddha heard their story, he gathered all the groups around and told this parable. Once upon a time, in this very city, a king had a theory he wanted to test. Without revealing his secret, the king ordered his attendants to bring together all the men in the city who had been blind since birth. Right away, Your Majesty, they said, and rushed off to do the king's bidding. It was a challenging task to find every last man in the city, but finally the servants accomplished it. Your Majesty, the head servant announced, all of the men in our city, blind since the time of birth, are now assembled and waiting for you within the palace courtyard." "Very well done," praised the king, and knowing that these men had never seen nor touched an elephant, the king requested that his gentlest elephant be led into the middle of the courtyard. The great elephant was brought out and stood calmly before them. The king had the men form a great circle around her. "Now, all of you," ordered the king, "slowly reach forward and feel what an elephant is like." Some of the blind men touched only the animal's face, while the others felt the elephant's giant ears. Some of the men felt the hard tusks, and some only touched the trunk, and some only the belly. Many of the men felt just a leg, and a few only the tail. And to each group, the king and his men proclaimed the same thing: "This is what an elephant is like." After a while, the king stopped the men and asked, "Have you all felt the elephant? Are each of you very sure what an elephant is like now?" "Yes, we certainly are," they shouted. So the king had the elephant led away, and then he asked, "Tell me, each of you, what exactly is an elephant like?" The blind man who felt the elephant's head said, "Oh, your majesty, the elephant is like a huge water pot." The blind man who touched his ears said, "Your majesty, an elephant feels like a royal fan." "Your majesty, an elephant is like a strong plow," said another one who had felt only the tusks. And the blind man who felt only the belly recalled, "An elephant is like a grain bin full of wheat." The ones who felt the elephant's tail said, "Well, actually, your majesty, an elephant is like a giant snake." But when all the men heard the different responses, they thought surely the others were lying to their king. Right away, an argument broke out among them, and of course, none of them believed any of the others, and in no time at all, they resorted to shouts and punches. "An elephant feels like a water pot." "It does not. It's a great plow. I felt it with my own hands." "It's not anything like a plow. It's exactly like a giant fan." "Two of us thought so." "An elephant is nothing like what you said." And the king, concluded the Buddha, was delighted with his experiment. It's precisely like this, O brothers, that you also find so many things to argue about. Please do consider joining us for religious exploration next Sunday morning at 9:45. Thank you.
Take a deep breath. Then maybe another, and just be present in this moment. And ask yourself, how am I doing? How are you doing? This is a challenging time for many people, and so how are you doing? How are you doing? Take a moment to be aware of yourself. What pains and sorrows and worries, regrets and fears you have to bear. It's a heavy load. It's good to acknowledge that load on your heart, knowing it, naming it. You can tame it. You can simply be with it and begin to allow yourself to feel compassion, for yourself. Can you feel compassion for yourself? Even as you can feel compassion for others, you can feel this for yourself. Why should you be exempt from the caring circle of compassion? even as we feel compassion for one another, may we also learn to feel compassion for ourselves. Yet to be complete, compassion must radiate outward towards others. Look upon others with loving kindness. Bow to the sacred in others and care for them when you can. Think for a moment of the people within your wide circle of acquaintances. Close your eyes and envision them in your mind's eye, all the people in your wide circle of acquaintances. To which person does your compassionate concern most feel drawn on this morning? Hold them in compassionate regard. Say their names. If possible, reach out to them and offer them the gift of your compassionate presence. Let us always remember to walk the path of compassion and the path of gratitude. Halloween. Normally, many children come. Last night, no children came to my door, and I miss them. I miss seeing the children. So let us hope for next year. And yet now, let us feel gratitude for the young ones in our lives, the children, and the great and the grandchildren. Think of all the young ones in your life. And let us, during this liminal time of year, also turn our attention to those now gone. Those loved ones and friends who once enriched our lives, who now live in our hearts. Think now of these young ones and ones now gone. Be aware of the gift of their presence in your life. Be aware of the gratitude that arises. Allow the gratitude to fill your heart, and all will be well. Amen. You may remember that we have a ritual we call Compassionate Connection, and we're going to, we've always done the Compassionate Connection on the second Sunday of the month, and we're going to start doing that again virtually. So I would like to invite you to pay attention to the announcements in the newsletter and the Friday e-blast, giving you instructions on how you could join our ritual of compassionate connection, especially if you've been going through a really, really difficult time. This will give us an opportunity to reach out to one another. So please look for that announcement.
Another way to stay connected with the UUCS community is through your sharing of your joys and concerns. Please go to the website and find the links where you can write down your joy and concern and share it with others. Thank you.
Our pastoral hymn today is Let Love Continue Long. It's number 129 in the gray hymnal. Let love continue long and show to us the
not be found, though common faith prevails. When love does not abound, a common faith will fail. When human love does not abound, a common faith will always fail. If we in love unite, debate can cause no strife, for with this love in sight, disputes enrich our life. For with this bond of human love, disputes can mean a richer life. May love continue long and lead us on our way. For if that love be strong, no hurt can have a say. For if that love remain but strong, no hurt can ever have a say.
As labor is the common burden of our race, so the effort of some to shift their share of the burden onto the shoulders of others is the great durable curse of the race. As I would not be a slave, so I would not be a master. This expresses my idea of democracy. Whatever differs from this is no democracy. Our reliance is on our love for liberty. Our defense is in the spirit which prizes liberty as the heritage of all people in all lands everywhere. Destroy this spirit, and we have planted the seeds of despotism at our own doors. Those who deny freedom to others don't deserve it for themselves and cannot long retain it. Why shouldn't there be a patient confidence in the ultimate justice of the people? Is there any better or equal hope in the world? Let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith, let us to the end dare to do our duty as we understand it.
The ancient Greek philosopher Plato is renowned for his dialogues, which often featured his own mentor, Socrates. And so as I relate the following, keep in mind that it's Plato's views that we know for sure that we're encountering. We're not sure about Socrates. In one famous dialogue, Socrates he's having a dialogue with a proponent of democracy, Alcibiades. And he asks Alcibiades, he says, imagine that there's a group of people, they're planning to embark on a perilous sea voyage. Who would they want choosing to be the captain of their ship? Should everybody get a vote on this, or should this decision be entrusted to those who actually know what knowledge and skills are necessary for navigating a ship? And Plato thought, of course, that well, you want the experts making this decision, not just everyone. And it naturally followed, the philosopher reasoned, that the same would hold true when you're selecting leaders for the ship of state. Leave it to the experts. Simply put, Plato didn't think democracy was such a good idea because it entails trusting people to make important decisions that he didn't think they were equipped to make. Over 2,000 years later, Thomas Jefferson, obviously a proponent of our democracy as the nation was being founded, he was worried, though, and he recognized that democracy is not a lead pipe cinch. You know, there are things that you have to do to make it work. And he said, an educated citizenry is a vital requisite for our survival as a free people. An educated citizenry is a vital requisite for our survival as a free people. That is, citizens should be informed and they vote wisely, lest our ship of state founder. Just a few decades after Jefferson was writing, there was a brilliant French political theorist and historian, Alexis de Tocqueville, and he was touring America. And he recognized the consequence of having an uneducated, ill-informed citizenry. It is what has been called the Achilles heel of democracy. The Achilles heel of democracy, which is the tyranny of the majority. The tyranny of the majority. You can imagine how that works. A majority of voters can indeed be ill-informed or ill-willed, get swept up by populist rhetoric and demagoguery, and make poor, unjust choices with their votes. This has happened countless times. Socrates had firsthand experience of this. He was accused by demagogues of corrupting the youth of Athens, and he was put on trial for his crime. A jury of 500 voted on Socrates' fate. It was an exercise in democracy. 500 got to vote on this, and a slight majority decided that Socrates was guilty of corrupting the youth of Athens, and he faced a choice, either exile or death. And he chose the latter. He was given a goblet of poisoned hemlock, and he drank it, and this great soul died. Many have died or suffered oppression at the hands of a tyrannical majority. Indeed, the reason today that we still have the death penalty in many states, including Oregon, is because it's supported by a majority of voters. Never mind that there is compelling reason to believe that innocent people have been executed, and some may still be. Then, too, many demagogues and populists and ideologues have sometimes garnered the support of a majority and then used that power to dismantle true democracy. No democracies where dissent and minorities were tolerated. So democracy, because of the tyranny of the majority, has within it the seeds of its own destruction. Democracy has so many inherent weaknesses that Churchill proclaimed it to be the worst form of government that there is. Democracy, the worst form of government that there is, except for all the others. Except for all the others. As messy as it can be, it's still the best form of government that we know about when it functions as it should, which it sometimes does, especially when there is an independent judiciary that can check the power of leaders with authoritarian tendencies. For us Unitarian Universalists, democracy is not just a political concern, it's a spiritual matter of the utmost importance. Indeed, the fifth principle of Unitarian Universalism of our association states that we covenant to affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. Personally, I'm grateful when others share their opinions and perspectives with me, and I'm often enriched by this. But for anybody, say a religious or a political authority, to insist that I'm not wise enough to figure things out, that I must accept their views no matter what I think or feel, that is a violation of my freedom of conscience, a freedom our liberal religious tradition has championed for over 4 centuries. In 1568, King John Sigismund of Transylvania, he was the only Unitarian king in history, and he issued the first ever edict of religious toleration in the Western world. And in this edict, King John Sigismund proclaimed, "In every place the preachers shall preach and explain the gospel, each according to their understanding of it. And if the congregation likes it, well, that's good. But if not, nobody should compel them, for their souls would not be satisfied. No one shall be reviled for their religion by anyone, and it is not permitted that anyone should threaten anyone else by imprisonment, for faith is the gift of God." That's the phrase I was working towards. Faith is the gift of God, or to state this in a more theologically inclusive way, I would say that the right to discern the truth for oneself, the truths that will guide and sustain you, is a gift of being. It's an inherent right. No one has a right to enslave your body. No one has a right to enslave your mind. That's why you'll often hear me refer to ours as a free faith congregation, a free faith congregation. Such freedom is grounded in the conviction, our conviction, that humankind is not inherently sinful, but good and worthy of trust, and that we are capable of making wise decisions. If somebody insists that you must accept a certain doctrine or ideology or belief, they are denying your spiritual freedom and your integrity. No one has the right to trespass upon your inner sanctum where your conscience discerns the truth. That is your personal sacred turf. And our ministry here is to empower you to trust in yourself, to love and care for yourself, to be yourself, not in a self-indulgent way, but in an authentic way. So the reason that Unitarian Universalists, that we don't have a creed or a dogma, is because this would infringe upon our right and our responsibility to discern the truth for ourselves. So instead of a creed, we agree to support principles that uphold our values, love and compassion and justice for all and respect for one another and democratic processes. Those values guide us, just like the North Star in the dark night sky used to guide slaves escaping to freedom. Our individual freedom of conscience and expression lies at the foundation of healthy democratic systems. This ensures that power is shared, not hoarded by a self-interested few. That's our noble democratic ideal. It's not the ignoble reality we live in today in our country, unfortunately. In truth, powerful economic interests hold sway over elected officials. The lobbyists actually write many of the laws that we live by because they have so much money, and they can do that. Sense of common purpose as one nation with liberty and justice for all. less and less. There's no demilitarized zone where folks holding different views and perspectives can meet on common ground, rediscover common values, and join together in common purpose. More and more, Americans regard those on the other side of the political spectrum as the enemy, who can't be persuaded, only pummeled. As a historian at the Anti-Defamation League recently put it, we're not just a polarized society, we are increasingly a confrontational society now. Also complicit in the demise of our democracy is big tech, social media. This has led many away from respectful democratic discourse. The role these tech companies play in dismantling our democracy is alarming, perverse, destructive, hugely profitable for them. They use insidiously clever algorithms that psychologically manipulate and addict people into clicking the next feed, which will pander to their prejudices, all of which serves to lead folks down rabbit holes to dark places where selective outrage, misinformation, vitriol, and venom are designed to stoke social and political polarization. The pathway to echo chambers where you only hear like-minded views has never been so easy to take. But democracy requires that we listen to opposing points of view, that we be willing to engage in dialogue, compromise when we must, rediscover our common ground that is eroding all too quickly in today's harsh political climate. We, the American people, are losing faith in one another, which means that we're losing faith in democracy. In a healthy democracy, there must be dialogue, not diatribes and demonization of those who hold opposing views. Talk about climate change. Friction from political polarization has created so much heat and anger that civility has melted away like an ice cap disappearing into the sea. Polls show that increasing numbers of people in both major parties actually loathe those on the other side in the other party. That's the anger. Polls also indicate that many people are afraid of being labeled and demonized and canceled if they give voice to their honest views. That's the fear. When Abraham Lincoln was running for office the first time for president, he quoted the Bible in a campaign speech, stating that a house divided against itself cannot stand. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Which begs the question, can we find a way to reconnect and keep our house of democracy standing? There are critical issues: climate change, socioeconomic inequality, medical care, housing, immigration policy. These all need to be discussed and addressed. We can't simply cease debating and discussing them, yet to be heard, you have to be willing to listen and maybe learn. Too often I haven't been willing. For example, I'm in favor of more gun control. I think there are too many guns in this country for sure, and too much gun violence. And I'm real insistent about that. But sometimes I think I need to be willing to listen to those who hold differing views. And there are valued members of the congregation here who have different perspectives on this. Simply labeling people on the other side as gun nuts, casting aside all humility and thinking I have nothing to learn, hasn't worked so well. Indeed, a critical aspect of being part of an informed electorate is being familiar with opposing views as a way of testing your own. And even if you don't learn new facts, you can learn about people's feelings and experiences and understand what's led them to think and feel as they do. You can remember again that those on the other side, think for just a second this morning about this nation and think about all those people on the other side from where you are. Guess what? They're people. They have hopes and dreams and fears and worries just like us. In knowing this, maybe you and I, we can begin to see those on other side of the spectrum as fellow citizens with different views that we strongly disagree with, but they're our fellow citizens, not our mortal enemies. It's now harder for us to recognize our common humanity. We have moved from an age of information to an age of disinformation that seduces us into seeing the other as some kind of a threat. So here we are on the eve of a historic election, one in which we can now see how the weaknesses of democracy have been exposed and exploited. It's tempting to point the finger of blame at the current occupant of the White House. And yet our nation has long been on the path of increasing polarization. Indeed, there's a vast polarization industrial complex that's gaining power, and it profits even as the rest of us get robbed of the opportunity for meaningful dialogue, which could lead towards meaningful action. In just 2 days, the election will be held. And many of us fear that the current president will not honor his constitutional duty to relinquish power should he lose this election. What would we do? What will we do should that occur? I believe, should this occur in a democratic society, that coordinated nonviolent protests and non-cooperation with those who would usurp our rights will be the order of the day. That will be democracy in action. Should the challenger clearly win this election, the challenges we face are many, but we'll not be able to face them until we can begin to meet others face to face and discover a new consensus. Many years ago, 1860, on the eve of the Civil War, in his first inaugural address, Lincoln pleaded for Americans to recognize their common interests. As surely they will be by the better angels of our nature. Imagine Lincoln delivering that inaugural address right on the eve of the Civil War, pleading we must not be enemies, and yet we became enemies. Tragically, the demonic side of human nature prevailed, and our nation was plunged into a civil war with losses that were exponentially greater than anyone's expectations. And this has left a scar on our national psyche. Historians can argue whether that war was necessary, but it was absolutely necessary for slavery to be abolished. But today, there truly is no cause for violent conflict. Yet the strong forces of division and discord are pulling us apart. And Lincoln's words echo in my mind. And I have come to recognize that the better angels of my nature, better angels of my nature are calling me to reach out in new ways to help create true dialogue wherein we can discover together the ways our ship of state should sail into an unknown future and not founder upon the rocks of discord and division, in anger and hatred and violence. Take a moment to simply pause. Whatever thoughts and feelings are stirred up in you at this moment in time, know that you are called. Your presence, your voice, your participation is sorely needed. Let us move forward with wisdom and equanimity, compassion for our enemies, recognizing that we share this beautiful blue orb we call home, that we are on a long journey, learning how to live together. Have faith. Have faith that we can make this journey. Have faith that we do have the wisdom to choose wisely. Have faith. Amen.
From Thich Nhat Hanh, water flows from high in the mountains. Water runs deep in the earth. Miraculously, water comes to us and sustains all life. Water and sun green the plants. When the rain of compassion falls, even a desert becomes an immense green ocean. We support UUCS through our pledges, time, and connections with one another. We also support the Salem community through donations to the Marion Polk Food Share. For the month of November, we are highlighting the needs of communities affected by the fires to the east. Please consider supporting two groups, the Santiam Wildlife Relief, what did I say wildlife, excuse me, Wildfire Relief Fund, and the Santiam Hospital's Service Integration Team. This program serves as a safety net to families and individuals. Please send your checks to UUCS or visit the website to donate. Thank you for helping our congregation and the wider community of Salem. And notice on the slide how to donate. Click on the donate link and then you can view your options listed there. Thank you. We take the light from our chalice to light the social justice lantern as a symbolic reminder of the light and justice we carry out into the world. As we extinguish the chalices, let us reflect on these words from Reverend Mark Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed.
I hope you see the slide in front of you right now. It tells you how you can join the fellowship gatherings after our Sunday services. And hope you do that, because it's not quite as good as getting to sit at the table across from people and enjoying coffee, but it's a good way to connect with people. So I hope you will join the Zoom fellowship gatherings after the service today. I'd also like to remind you that we have a 8 o'clock gathering on election night, just to check in and breathe deeply and have a meditation, a word of wisdom, perhaps. We'll see what's going on by that time, but we did want to gather as a community during election night, so please do take advantage of that. I'd like to invite George Struble up. George has an announcement about the updates on our legacy campaign.
There are 3 weeks left in this legacy campaign to secure our congregation's future. Including the commitments made before this campaign, we now have 21 members whose commitments total $1,051,000. Thank you. $166,000 of that is in this campaign itself, well short of the $450,000 that will earn the challenge pledge of another $50,000. But we have 3 weeks left. A number of members have expressed support for this campaign as something for other people to do. Oh, were you talking to me? Yes, I am. Nearly every one of us could designate some portion of "I can't take it with me" to UUCS. Please consider what you can do. Thank you.
Our closing hymn today is "We Would Be One." It's number 318 in the gray hymnal.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts
Let us join hands in body and spirit, saying these words together. May faith in the spirit of life, hope for the community of earth, and love for the sacred in one another be ours now and in all the days to come. May it be so.